The police were not policy makers, but they were policy enforcers. They did misuse discretion.
That's just low and has no place.
Victorians are fed up with their state police force, with public confidence in Victoria Police falling to its lowest levels since records began.
That's just low.
58% of those surveyed said they were satisfied with policing service, with the same number saying they have confidence in the police.
And I'm very confident.
Victoria Police really want those numbers to be in the 80s, not in the 50s. We're a long way from that, former Victoria Police Chief Commissioner Kel Blair said.
It's hard to explain why it played out the way it did.
Unfortunately, what we saw through COVID and the lockdowns was many police actions being unreasonable, violent and indefensible. Victoria Police was seen as tools of the government, not independent, and that cost them dearly. And Kosha, in recent weeks, we've seen judgments to that effect from a judge in a courtroom saying police were the instigators of violent clashes, used unreasonable force.
Spread their private bits for the police. Strip searched more than once.
We can kind of understand these figures.
Indeed, I think this is one of many consequences on the long bow of consequences from the fiasco that was the way governments conducted themselves around the world. In COVID, you saw Fauci hearings in the US, different but related, all these years later, and the anger is very palpable among people. So the police were not policy makers, but they were policy enforcers. They did misuse discretion in terms of how to bring their force to bear. And I think it's not a surprise that those results are there.
Getting angry about it doesn't really serve any purpose. I'm just being clear. It has to stop.
Enough is enough.
There's a second undercurrent too, which I think is the politicization of all institutions, including the police force. And that's another piece to that people don't trust institutions. There's a crisis of credibility, and there's a loss of this trust in terms of how well they're executing themselves and exercising their force, and that's part of this as well.
I am not going to be responding to claims that have been made by people
who had to spread their private bits for the police.
Absolutely, and we saw some of those indefensible actions just before with some of that vision that was on screen. We cannot forget that, and there really hasn't been a reckoning for most of that. I know there's a lawsuit happening now from 5 people who were
strip searched,
arrested violently, but there were so many others who were affected in a fairly dramatic fashion.
I've got nothing but praise and gratitude for members of Victoria Police. I think they've done a fantastic job, so I'm not concerned about those things.